It is the early hours of the 28th of June, 1880. A small railway town in northeastern Victoria sleeps beneath a winter sky. In a modest weatherboard inn, lamps burn behind drawn curtains. Inside, a man in a long coat and a strange iron helmet waits for a train that will never arrive as planned. His name is Edward Kelly, known across the colony as Ned. He is 25 years old, the son of an Irish convict, and the most wanted man in Australia. For nearly 2 years, he has eluded the Victoria police through the ranges of the northeast. Tonight, at Glenrowan, he intends to end the hunt on his own terms. The story begins long before the siege. The Kelly family settles in the Beveridge district in the 1860s, scratching a living from poor soil. Ned's father dies when the boy is 12, and the family drifts north to the 11-mile creek near Greta. There, among other poor Irish selectors, the Kellys become known to police as troublesome, suspect, and watched. By the late 1870s, the tension between selectors and authorities is sharp. In April 1878, Constable Alexander Fitzpatrick rides to the Kelly homestead to arrest Ned's brother Dan. What happens there is disputed for the rest of history. Ned's mother, Ellen Kelly, is sentenced to 3 years in prison, and Ned and Dan flee into the bush. They are joined by Joe Byrne and Steve Hart, forming what the press soon calls the Kelly Gang. In October 1878, at Stringerbark Creek, the gang ambushes a police search party. 3 officers are killed: Sergeant Kennedy, Constable Lonergan, and Constable Scanlon. The colony recoils in horror, and the 4 young men are declared outlaws by an Act of Parliament. The outlawry transforms the gang into folk legend. In December 1878, they take over the town of Ura and rob the National Bank of more than £2,000. 2 months later, they cross into New South Wales and seize the town of Jerilderie, locking the police in their own cells. There, Ned dictates a long, defiant letter explaining his grievances against the police and the courts. The Jerilderie letter is more than a confession. It is a manifesto for the poor Irish selectors of the northeast, a roar of injustice from a man who believes the law has hunted his family without cause. For sympathisers, it confirms Ned as a champion of the oppressed. For the government of Victoria, it makes his capture an urgent matter of state. Through 1879 and into 1880, the gang vanishes into the ranges. A network of relatives and sympathisers shelters them, feeds them, and warns them of police movements. The reward on their heads climbs to £8,000, an enormous sum. Yet Ned is no longer thinking only of survival. He is planning something larger, something that will, he believes, ignite a rebellion. In the forges of sympathetic farmers, the gang begins to build armour. Working with stolen plough mouldboards, they hammer out crude suits of iron to cover the chest, back, shoulders, and head. Each suit weighs nearly 40 kilograms. Ned's helmet, a great cylinder with a narrow eye slit, becomes the most famous mask in Australian history. The plan at Glenrowan is audacious. A police special train is expected to carry trackers and officers from Melbourne to Beechworth. The gang intends to tear up the railway line above Glenrowan, derail the train in a deep cutting, and kill the survivors. With the police force shattered, sympathisers will rise, and a Republic of Northeastern Victoria may be declared. On Sunday, the 27th of June, the gang rides into Glenrowan. They force platelayers to loosen the rails north of the station. Then they round up more than 60 townspeople and herd them into Ann Jones's Glenrowan Inn. For most of a day and a night, the hostages are held while the gang waits, drinks, and even dances with their captives. But the plan unravels. The local schoolmaster, Thomas Curnow, gains Ned's trust through flattery and conversation. Released to take his sick wife home, Curnow walks down the dark track carrying a candle and a red scarf. When the police special at last approaches in the early hours of Monday morning, he waves the warning that saves it. The train breaks to a halt outside Glenrowan. The police pour out, led by Superintendent Hare. They surround the inn in the freezing darkness. Inside, the gang dons their armour. Outside, more than 50 hostages cower behind thin walls as the first shots crack across the line. Hare is wounded almost immediately, struck in the wrist as the siege begins. For hours, bullets rip through the weatherboards of the Glenrowan Inn. Hostages crawl across the floor, sheltering behind furniture beneath bedsteads. A child, Johnny Jones, is mortally wounded. An old man, Martin Cherry, is struck and lies dying in a back room. The gang fires from doors and windows, their armor ringing as rounds glance away. At some point in the chaos, Ned slips out of the inn through the back. Wounded in the arm and foot, he disappears into the bush behind the police lines. Joe Byrne, drinking at the bar, is shot through the groin and bleeds to death on the floor. Dan Kelly and Steve Hart fight on inside, encased in iron, firing from the smoke-filled rooms. As dawn breaks on the 28th of June, a strange figure emerges from the mist behind the police. Tall, slow, clad in iron, he advances on the officers with a revolver in his hand. Bullets strike his chest and helmet and ricochet away. For a moment, the police believe they are facing a ghost, a bunyip, a devil walking through fire. Sergeant Steele, realizing the armor does not protect the legs, drops to one knee and fires low. Ned Kelly falls in the wet grass, struck repeatedly in the legs and groin. The officers swarm over him, prise off the helmet, and find a bearded man pale with blood loss. He has 28 wounds in his body. The last bushranger is taken alive. Inside the inn, the end comes by fire. After hours of negotiation, the police set the building alight in the early afternoon. A Catholic priest, Father Gibney, rushes in through the flames and finds Dan Kelly and Steve Hart already dead, lying side by side. Martin Cherry is carried out to die in the open air. Joe Byrne's body is dragged from the burning ruin. Ned Kelly is taken to Melbourne, tried before Sir Redmond Barry, and convicted of the murder of Constable Lonergan. On the 11th of November, 1880, he is hanged at the old Melbourne jail. He is 25 years old. His reported last words, whether spoken or invented, echo through the country still. Such is life. More than a century later, Glenrowan remains a place of pilgrimage. The armor survives in museums, dented by the bullets of that winter dawn. Ned Kelly endures as outlaw, rebel, murderer and myth, a figure argued over in every generation. The siege lasted less than 12 hours. The story it began has never quite ended.